Hello, everybody, and welcome to GRX Live. I'm Jade Scott, and today we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend, some would call the godfather of business coaching, my very own business coach from about 15 years ago, Paul Wright. Welcome.
Absolute pleasure to be here. At least I'm not the grandfather. I thought originally I might have been the grandfather. That would have concerned me, but godfather's pretty ordinary. So
no, well, in some people's eyes, we'll put that on ice. But look, I'm thrilled that you're joining me today. We've got a history that dates into almost 2 decades. You knew me when I was kind of a budding young business owner when I first opened, didn't know where I was headed. So probably a couple of flashbacks for you, but I did have the pleasure of working with you. And you've worked with hundreds, thousands of allied health business owners now.
Yeah, across the world, different professions, and it's a great journey. It's actually been really cool, Jade, during COVID to see the different parts of the world and how they've coped with different things. And we're borrowing what's happening in the UK and Canada at the moment because they're 6 months in front of us. So it's been a journey. It's been a great ride the whole way along. And I still remember one of my first memories of you in one of our events in Melbourne we went to. This is 15 years ago. Front and centre, notepad in hand. You were. I'd never seen a nodder like you. You were just sponging it up, and I knew you were going places. You were it.
I actually do remember that like it was yesterday, and obviously there's a lot of takeaways, and I guess I'm quite humbled in my success, but I certainly pulled together lots of advice, especially from people like yourself, which brings me to my more formal introduction of you.
Right.
So you are a physiotherapist, obviously, former owner of multiple allied health clinics in Australia, which you rarely visited. That's noted in a lot of your websites. You're an author of an Amazon bestseller, How to Run a 1-Minute Practice. Wouldn't that be nice? And founder of Practiceology, the health business freedom program. And, on top of helping thousands of business owners and professionals, you've worked across 57 countries. And you're working less and doing more outside of that. So, tell us, if you're not practicing anymore, what's a day in the life of Paul Wright look like these days?
What's a day in my life? I've always been an early riser. So I'm exercising early. I'll go to the gym when it's open, or I'm a mad key surf ski paddle these days. So I get out in the water and paddling surf skis. So there's exercise in the morning. And then I've got a small group of mentor clients I do personally. And then I'm running the business. So we've got the Practiceology program and online programs and everything else. So it's just staying in contact with our database, contacting, communicating, creating programs, looking for the opportunities, which we'll talk about today, which you guys have to do as well. And hopefully merging my ideas with the opportunity in the marketplace. That's one of our major roles, and one of the things that determines our success in business, how well we match our product to what the market wants. And we'll talk about that as we go through today.
Yeah. And I guess before we get into that, obviously a lot of what we do and the foundations and the focus of GrowthRx is on leadership. I am throwing this to you as a curveball. I didn't prepare because I liked the authentic answers that come from it. How do you define leadership?
Define leadership. I think being someone that someone wants to follow, setting the example, being true to your word, and we'll even talk about presentations. Sometimes we struggle being a health business owner because I think, Jade, we want to be liked all the time, and we had this discussion early in our working together, and that's not really the key. And you can't be liked all the time as a health business owner or a business owner in any field, but you've got to be respected. And owners that struggle with this popularity concept, they're going to struggle as leaders because you're not always going to be liked by your team. And it's ridiculous to think you can be, because think about the owner-employee relationship. You determine their hours, you determine their wage, you determine their holidays, you determine what they wear. How can you always be popular when you're in charge of all those things? And you're a great leader, and you're not always going to be popular, but you've always got to be respected. And that's one of the things I think that sets the leader apart. They're respected by their team, even if they're not always liked by their team.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that more and more now at the moment, is that building of trust within your team. And I think this is why I wanted to get you on talking to people today. I think there's nobody better right now through all of the years of experience you've had, but not even personally, but constantly having your finger on the pulse and dealing with business owners and the issues and the challenges that we're struggling with at the moment, particularly in a pandemic. Now, I mean, we've kind of had a bit of fun with this today, and we've broken it down into the 7 critical mistakes, dun, dun, dun. But outside of that, I mean, really, I'd love to know, what are you seeing? Business owners are doing it really tough right now, and especially in what area? I mean, I know COVID's thrown a curveball, but where are people struggling?
Recruitment's a big one at the moment. We're seeing that globally, Jay. We're seeing that across the world. But recruitment just gives you a kick up the bum to become a better business. And so poor recruitment often comes because you've got poor systems and you're not the preferred employer. So we've found COVID, I think, from the last 18 months, I've done emails about this. I think it pulled a lot of people's pants down. It revealed their systems weren't good, their recruitment wasn't great, their marketing, they weren't in contact with their database. Then COVID arrived, everyone's playing catch up. We've got to let our patients know we're still open or we're closed. So it revealed a lot. And I think our big challenge at the moment is recruitment, but equally it's an opportunity to fix your systems. And I've been around long enough to know every crisis is an opportunity if you know where to look for it. And you have to, and here is a golden opportunity. And we've seen UK, Canada, even and people that are coming out a bit further than us in Australia, businesses are booming. Allied health is booming, and it's going to keep booming. So we've got great opportunities if we handle it right now. So,
and it is so fast paced at the moment. Things are changing so quickly. The better business owners, the better leaders are the ones, would you say, who make the best decisions the fastest?
Well, there's an analysis paralysis in most cases where health business owners aren't usually great at making big decisions. They delay a lot. I try and reduce that time. Just make the decision and move on. You know it's going to be right, but make a decision and move on. And you've earned the right to do that. And my mentors tell me behind every successful business or part of your business is a risky decision. You just got to make the decisions. And these decisions, Jade, if you don't make them, they drain you of energy because they're there to be made, and you're umming and ahhing about it, and just do it. I did an email recently, I don't know if you saw it, was the eat the frog principle. And I love eat the frog. Brian Tracy taught me this years ago. He says, if the only thing you have to do in a day, and there's no way out of it, is to eat a live frog. So that's your job. You've got this frog, and it's a live frog, and that's all. But you can't get out of it. You've got to eat the frog. The principle says if you're going to eat it soon. Like don't have the thing hopping around all day. Don't have it there. Don't wait till the end of the day to eat it. Eat it early. And a lot of health business owners avoid difficult conversations, or they avoid making decisions. They've just got to eat the frog and do it and move on. Great things happen on the other side of difficult conversations. Make that happen. And
it's so true. I remember one of the quotes you gave me that I still remember all those years ago is, and I was at risk of this. I was guilty of trying to be liked by everyone, by my team. In fact, they walked all over me. They told me when they were going to work. They told me when they were going to finish. They told me when the clinic opened and closed. And I remember you saying to me, Jade, you can't confuse friend and friendly.
Yep.
And I think from that moment on, I think the first step I did was, as you said before, you've got to learn to respect yourself so that other people will respect you. And if you don't, you'll get trampled on. And sometimes it's not about beating around the bush. It's about plowing through the forest. And that's kind of what I started doing after that point.
You have to. You're the business owner. I mean, and you will get challenged sometimes. One of my favorite ones, I'm in a staff meeting with my guys one time, like 6 practices, we're all there. And I laid out all what they're doing and everything else. And one of them, and I was, by that stage, I didn't do any consulting. So I'd stopped my consulting roster. And one guy put his hand up. He said, just a second, Righty, while we're doing all this, what are you doing? Because he knew I wasn't in the practice. I could have been anywhere. I said, well, that's a good question. I said, I'm doing whatever I bloody well want to do. But if I did come back as a consulting therapist, whose job will I take? And he sat down. Now, the idea of that you've got to sometimes stand your ground. So you might not agree with it, but this is how it's going to go down. You've got to stamp your authority on the practice, and that's what most owners, unfortunately, or some owners don't do. But and I'm a little bit dictatorial too. I know 20 years ago I could get away with a lot of this stuff. So I'm a very different animal now. And even when I interviewed you for one of my programs recently, my dinosaur comes out all the time. And yeah, but I deal with that all the time. But it's a different animal now to a certain extent, but the principles are the same. Whose business is it? It's your business. You decide what happens. That's your call, as you learned.
And I think that's why I love the leadership journey so much. And that's why I felt like it was a huge space in allied health where people had to stand up and show up and increase their confidence and conviction when delivering these decisions. So that's why I love and have moved across into the leadership side, because being a better leader makes you a better business owner. But that takes me to the point of, I mean, 6 highly successful businesses, but it's been noted that this all started from a bus passing by your first practice. I mean, this is number one. Tell us about point number one.
Well, point number one. So essentially, here I am. I'm like every health business owner. I'm working, starting early, finishing late. So and I've got a cubicle of one practice in Chatswood in Sydney, and I've got a big window at my cubicle, and I see the sun come up out of this window, and I see the sun go down out of this window. And there's a busy road, and there's a bus goes past this road, and the bus kept going past. And on the side of the bus, why most small businesses fail and what to do about it is written on the side of the bus. Why most small businesses fail and what to do about it. And I kept seeing this bus go past. Now I'm a very analytical, structured guy, but I'm getting better now to say, well, the universe is telling me something. I'm getting better at this universe business. So I followed up and I called the number on the side of the bus, and it led me eventually to a Michael Gerber seminar, which was the E-Myth. Now, Michael Gerber's E-Myth book, which we'll mention at some stage today. The idea that you can run your business and not be there was this whole Gerber principle. So I totally immersed myself in E-Myth and Gerber, and I then get to the stage where I ran 6 practices and didn't go to any of them. And I had some mates in the fitness industry who had gyms, and we were competing with each other as who could be at your business the least in every week. So this became a challenge for us. So, but it was all based on the bus going past. And they say in business, Jade, small hinges swing big doors. And that was a small hinge for me, the bus going past, but pivotal moment. You just lead you on a journey of discovery into this. And we'll talk about that as we go through today with the E-Myth, because it's fundamental to business success.
Yeah. And I guess, well, that takes us to number 2. You talk about 2 factors, and only 2 factors that determines the success of a healthy business. Is it that simple?
Well, let's just, so I'm an analytical guy. So we talked about today 7 critical steps or critical mistakes. Critical mistake 1 is really failing to understand the true role of your business. So that's kind of where we were at the start of today. And the job of your business is to give you more life. That's the only role of the business. If it's not doing that, it's taking it from you. And that whole idea of what are you in business for? If you ask guys why they're in business, they'll say, I want the freedom. I want to make my own decisions. I want to be my own boss. And they're all fantastic until you start doing it and realize you're doing all those things, but you're also seeing all the patients as well. And that's the whole idea of the E-Myth, that the entrepreneurial myth, that I want to be an owner, but I'm still seeing all the patients as well. And that's where this E-Myth comes around. So one tip for you on that, we talk in our practiceology program about the freedom score. And the freedom score is simply how many hours each week do you physically need to be in your practice? So what's the hour count? And in most people look at that and they'll say, well, it's how many consulting hours I'm doing. So I've got to be in there for 30 hours or 40 hours or 50 hours. But if you're doing 40, 50 hours of consulting, most owners are still doing the marketing, the recruitment, the sales, everything else. So then their week is like an 80-hour week. So work out your freedom score. And while we talk about your role in the business, you can choose what that freedom score is. You can choose, you're choosing to do 40, 50 hours a week. You're choosing that. We've got owners in practiceology now, and be aware our typical mindset, Jade, is whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's a shortage of money or someone leaves or something happens, the natural default of the owner is to do more consulting. I'll see more patients, and they end up just creeping up in that. So be careful of that. I try to push my guys the other way. You should be dropping it. And especially during COVID, when, as we're seeing in the UK, you need a lot of locum labour or fill-in spots. I prefer my owners to be not on a rostered book, but to be able to jump in if they need to because of short-term turnover. So understand the role of your business is to give you more life. And leading into your second part of the question, well, what's the other big mistake that people make in the two key drivers? There are only two of them: available market and available labour. They're the two drivers of any successful health business: available market and available labour. Now, think about what that means, Jade. If I'm a practitioner and I decide to open a practice in regional Australia, I go out bush because there's no therapist there. So I've identified there's a market for that. So I'm okay. They're crying out for a therapist out here. That's okay, but how are you going to find staff for that place? How are you going to get them to that location? So you've got available market, but you haven't got available labour. A guy comes up to me at a seminar once and he says, hey, Paul, this is all great, mate, but I want to open 7 practices in the North Shore of Sydney. And he was very confident. I want to open, and okay. And I say, okay, well, that's great, mate. Does the area need that? Does the area need 7 more health practices? Well, I think it does. So how do you know that? Well, I think it needs it. So he hadn't done any market research, so he's got an idea that there's market. Now, maybe there is. So maybe he gets lucky and there is market. But then I said, well, how are you going to staff it? Oh, I'm just going to advertise. And okay, have you looked at the shortages of labour? So you've got to have these two things in your mind every time when you think about opening a business: available market and available labour. And the mistake that's talking about, Jade, is we fall in love with our product instead of falling in love with our market. This guy fell in love with the idea of owning 7 practices. He fell in love with that idea. So he wanted to do it, but did the market need it, and can he staff it? I'll give you a tip straight up. The market doesn't give a rat's what you want. The market doesn't care. Your job is to find a hungry market and solve their problem. Now, think about how we started. I don't know about you, Jade. What led you to become an osteopath? Because you wanted to? Why did you become an osteopath?
Oh, look, I think honestly, if I'm looking at, of course, the whole cliche, I want to help people. I mean, we all have to say that, right? And it's genuine as well. But for me, I grew up in a family business. I grew up with a grandfather when I was 14 years old who made me promise him I'd never work for anyone but myself. And it's interesting that you say that. You talk about things like choices. I mean, excuse my language, but I call you a no bullshit genius. You call it like it is. And there's so much common sense that we're hearing now, but people want to open in the suburb that they grew up because that's where their friends are. I mean, I did demographic studies of the Western corridor of Australia before I opened a clinic in Melton. Did I ever want to live in Melton? No. Yep. Do I still want to live in Melton? No. Do I love the people? It was a business decision. I made a very clear business decision. And I guess that's where we see when we're doing a lot of coaching, and I see you now, people who open a business in their own name or in their street name. I mean, it niches people, doesn't it?
They open because they want to do it. But the market doesn't care what you want. Like, give an example. I love Shark Tank. I'm not sure if you're watching Shark Tank, but guys, get into Shark Tank because it's just it's a mind-blowing experience of people that are just mucking it up in business, which I love. So this guy that turns up once, my favorite Shark Tank story, he had his product was the underarm pads that stop sweat from going on your shirt. So guys, you can buy these pads that you stick under your arm and it stops your shirt from getting sweaty. And that was his product. So he pitches it to the sharks. And they said, how's it going so far? Oh, it's going well. How many have you sold? Oh, well, I've been doing it now for nearly 6 years. And we've sold a couple of hundred. So the guy has sold a couple of hundred units in years. And the sharks said, well, hang on. the market's not really biting here. I'm not interested. So they all bailed, and they interviewed the guy afterwards, and he walked out and he said, no, I didn't get the result I wanted, but I'm going to keep going with this. See, because I believe in it. I believe in it. The market doesn't want it, but I believe in it. Big mistake. You might have a passion for, I don't know, treating elbow pain in one-armed golfers. Let's say that's your niche, and you love it. You're passionate about it. But is there enough market for it? Well, probably not. So get over yourself and find what the market wants and solve the market problem. Fall in love with your market. Don't fall in love with the product. That's the mistake.
I guess my question in response to that, you've got a lot of business owners, rural practices in particular, the market wants it. And this does tie back into that second factor, is understanding the labor and the need and the supply. Yep. And at the moment, we are struggling with not only competing with private practice owners, but big private equity firms who are buying out nursing homes, hiring people, NDIS, the public sector headhunting a lot of practitioners in private practice for the bigger dollar, the more security, the more money, the better lifestyle, flexible working hours. I mean, when you do love it, when there is a market for it, and if you ask me at the moment, you can do everything you want in recruitment, but if somebody doesn't want to leave their suburb and move to you, you're not going to become that preferred employer anyway. So we are at roadblocks with a lot of things. What do you say to those business owners?
Well, firstly, understand when you start this practice, what's the angle. So if you're going to go regional, you can't rely on that profession. So if you're a regional practitioner, we've got our guys diversifying labour supplies. So you might not be able to find a physio, but you can find a personal trainer. You can find a massage therapist. You can find someone else. So can you diversify your business enough to give you a range of labour? We're seeing that with AHAs, health assistants at the moment in NDIS. So getting the speech pathologist who works out of Melbourne to do the consultations on Zoom for the practice in Alice Springs, and then having the AHAs, the health assistants, do the work under the guidance of the Zoom. So thinking outside the box regarding your model is obviously one thing to do. The other thing too, Jade, is you've got to make sure in your business your product becomes the star, not the therapist. So we talked a lot when we were working with packages and programs that aren't reliant on therapists individually. They could come and see any therapist, and the program is the solution. And that then reduces your risk of being caught out if your gun therapist leaves. So you've got to protect yourself, as you said, not naming the business after yourself unless you've got a massive reputation. But making the package the star, so then you can put in the assistant, put in the trainer, put in the osteo, the chiro, whoever's going to fit in to follow the program, and it doesn't rely on just one labour supply, because that's risky. They say the most dangerous number in business, Jade, is the number one of anything, one referral source, one location, one therapist. The number of times I've woken up in a cold sweat, danger of one. There's a problem there when you rely on one of anything, because it's going away at some stage. It's just a matter of when.
And it is so true. We are seeing so many allied health clinics, and rightly so, they're diversifying now. Yep. This is why 15 years ago, I changed from Western Region Osteo to Western Region Health, because
exactly.
You have to increase your catchment. If you cast a small net, you'll only get a couple of fish. So, I mean, you really do have to extend your reach and extend your knowledge in all those areas as well.
Yep. So beware. So don't fall in love with your product, guys. It'll kill you. Your product is just your idea is to marry your skill set or create the skill set that serves the ideal client who is in abundance in your area. And I got lucky with my gig, Jade. I loved business and I love marketing, as you know, and it just happened to coincide with a desperate need for you guys to understand it, because we didn't learn it at university. So I got lucky. I ran a couple of seminars and there were stacks of people to it. There's a market here. And then you go down the path. Don't get in front of yourself and launch this massive thing and find there's no market there. That's a nightmare.
And I should, you're being too humble there, because it's not lucky. I do think my definition of luck is putting yourself in a situation where opportunity can present itself and then doing it again and again and again. So, I mean, you know, maybe back then there was a time where it was the right time at the right place, but I think you did draw on that and you have helped a lot of people, particularly, well, now tell us number 3. What's critical mistake number 3?
Falling victim to the perfectionist syndrome.
Oh.
Jade, is we're classics at it, and you're pretty good at it as well. Like I've seen some of us get so caught up, and I think it's something we inherit from uni. One of my mentors told me it's better to be 80% and out the door rather than 100% and in the drawer. And because we've got so many things it's just not quite ready yet. I just don't want to launch it yet because it's not quite right, or this needs to be fixed a bit better. Get over it. Just get it out there and see if the market likes it. And I think one of my best examples of that, Reid Hoffman, who I believe was the founder of LinkedIn, he said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. So if you're not embarrassed by the first thing you put out there, you've launched too late. Meaning put out the beta testing thing and see if it's got legs. If it gets some traction, then fix it. But don't spend 2 years seeing if something's getting it perfect and then wondering why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we inherit from uni. We get caught up in it being perfect, and I think, and one of my mentors told me once, you know, if you're worried about putting this program out there and it not being perfect and think, oh, the guy up the road's much better at knees than me, and you put out the knee program, or, you know, we second guess ourselves a lot. You don't have to be the best in the world at anything. You just got to be the best in their world. So let the guy up the road do whatever he likes, but my database will think I'm the best knee specialist in the area because I've just told him I am. Be careful about that, and don't wait to be anointed. Your association, don't wait to get crowned the knee expert. That's too slow. Just do it. Just get out there and position yourself as the expert by putting out great content, running the seminar, being at the front of the room. That's the easiest way to do it. My worst example, or my best example, I'm lecturing for the fitness industry back in the 90s, and just going back, and I'm lecturing anatomy. So I'm doing an anatomy course in the personal training thing, and I thought I knew a bit about anatomy. In the course is my anatomy tutor, my anatomy lecturer from physio school. So I'm up the front and this anatomy guru is in the audience, and I'm totally intimidated by this. But the more I thought about it, I'm thinking, hang on, they're not asking her the questions, they're asking me the questions. I'm in their eyes, I was the best in the world. So it's all about perception.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you come into people's lives when you need them, and you source people out when you need that advice. But I mean, social proof is so powerful anyway. As we know, word of mouth, getting other people saying that you're the best in the world is all you need. You don't have to say it yourself.
Yeah. Just put it out. Just put it out. If you've got something, if you want to test it, run a seminar, do an online thing, just see if anyone registers. Like, that's how this whole gig started for me. I think, you know, there's people interested in this.
Yeah. But
this has got legs.
Look, my ego is going to defend here slightly because I am one of those perfectionists, and I do think that my attention to detail and my ability to push and have that slight edge through the attention to detail has put me in good stead to where I am now. Yep. Surely there's certain personalities out there that run better businesses.
Certain personalities. Well, the best ones are the ones that are immune to criticism. They do it on their terms. They know that the majority is usually wrong, and almost always the majority is wrong, without upsetting everyone. But and yes, you will. It's good. There are certain people that dot the I's and cross the T's and everything's right. That's okay, but at what cost? You've talked about, you know, speed of implementation. The more things you can get done. I've worked with some guys in practiceology. You give them a task, and the next day it's done, and things will work, things won't work, but gee, they'll get some movement because they're putting things out there. Like the speed of implementation. We're typically in health professionals, we're typically a bit slow, we're a bit too analytical, we're a bit risk averse, and as a result, we are too slow to make these critical decisions.
And so, yeah, attention to detail, but the right detail, and not getting bogged down in things that.
Yeah, don't work. Don't waste your time. Too much. Time's the most precious resource. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
Just get on with it, for goodness sake.
Let's get on with number 4. What's number 4?
Inefficient, ineffective, non-supervised internal systems. You want to put 30% profit increase on the majority of health businesses. Fix some of the internal systems and fix them quickly. Like that, and one of the easiest ones you can do, and the best ones are those. What words are your team members using in the practice? What are they saying when they're doing their report of findings? What's the admin person saying when they answer the phone? Like, there's so much opportunity in there, and you can really improve your business just by tightening up those conversations. One of the things that we did initially was we recorded everything. So we record in services, we record training programs, we had them there, and we listened back what we were saying. You'll be staggered some of the things that your team member is saying in their consultations. And what are the classics? Give us a call if you want to cancel that appointment. Let us know if you can't make it. We'll give us a call in a few weeks. Like,
see how you go is banned.
See how you go. No worries. No worries. Give us a ring. But these are everywhere.
Ultimately, it is processes and procedures that people can follow who don't have the experience. I mean, I was worried at one point that I was going to get some backlash, because in my Good to Great in Private Practice course, there's a section there where I script practitioners, graduate practitioners, to help with rebooking.
Yep.
And it's not designed to be inauthentic. It's actually designed to help graduates who are lacking the conviction, lacking the confidence, don't have any experience in delivering a prognosis or a treatment plan, so that they're not thrown to the wolves. Because if you are fumbling, and I'm sure you'll agree, you become unconfident, somebody doesn't trust you, and if you don't believe in yourself, why would anybody else? So I think the key here, and I'm jumping the gun here because I've heard you talk about it before, scripting when it comes to your reception. What's an example of just one key line that you could give some of the listeners that you think needs to be totally eliminated from your practice, but one key line that will help when it comes to rebooking?
Well, let me give you the one that they if they use every time, they'll be in front. If they just use this, if admin team, no matter what, say the phone rings, doesn't matter what they ask you. What are your hours? Do you do knee pain? Are you open Saturday? I don't care what they ask you. And I talk about this a lot. That's actually not the real question. So the real question the person is asking is, can you help me? That's the question. But the person just hasn't got around to asking that right. So the admin person thinks they're efficient by answering the question. Oh, we're open at 8 o'clock. Oh, thanks for calling. But the person didn't ring to find out your opening hours. That wasn't their real question. They've got a problem. Why would they ring? They're not going to ring up and ask your opening hours if they haven't got a problem. They're not doing it for fun. So the words, what have you done? What have you done, Jade? What have you done? If that is all your admin team said, and they said over and over again, the person will say, oh, I've hurt my knee. How'd you do that? Oh, that's terrible. Well, Jade's sensational with knees. Let me see what we've got here. There's a 2 o'clock this afternoon. Let's organise that for you. You can't leave those. They'll just get worse and swell up, and let's get you booked in. Now, but it starts from what have you done? The admin, if they're not trained well, they think their job is to answer the question the person asked. That's not the real question. And if you want the other most important script, if you do nothing else, guys, in your treatment rooms, the words you must put into almost every action plan report of findings, if you were my. Jade, if you were my sister, if you were my daughter, this is what we'd be doing. If you were my. Takes away all the sales, takes away all the hassles. It's just your professional opinion, what's going to give that person the best outcome. If you were my mother, Mrs. Jones, this is what we'd be doing. And let the patient decide. Takes away all the stress. That's the key words. If you use that and that's all you did, and tighten up your front desk, you're 30% guaranteed.
There you go, delivering the golden nuggets, and
that's the nugget.
Through, hey?
Use that one. That's a golden one.
I love that, because it does draw on that notion of building trust, but also I do for you what I do for people I love, and you're no different. the person sitting in here in front of me is just as important as somebody else that I care about in my life. And yeah, it's beautiful. I think you've got 100 people out there now coming back going, if you were my.
Just try it. You'd be staggered the success of that, because it desensitizes everything, because that's just, we get caught up. You know what it's like. The therapist gets caught up with the person. Can they afford it? You know, all this sort of business. They're not going to be able to do this. This is too much. But that's not your job. Your job is not to make a financial plan for them. That's not your gig. It's silly to think that. I was speaking to one of our clients not long ago, and he said, experienced guy, like a 30-year physio. And he's saying, yeah, I was going to give this guy orthotics, but he didn't look like he could afford it, so I didn't do it. And I said, that's fantastic. Can you send me your financial certificates, your qualifications? He said, what? I said, well, you're obviously a financial planner. Give me your qualifications, because you're making suggestions for this guy. And he nodded, but he got it. Like, that's your job. And this comes back to what you expect, and what your job is to give them the solution to their problem. Their job's to work out if they can afford it or not. That's not your problem.
Yeah.
The other script that I'll throw at you, therapists say to me, but what if the person says they can't afford it? What if I make this recommendation? If you were my sister, this is what you'd be doing. And I say, I can't afford it. Listen, Jade, my job's not to tell you what you can and can't afford. All I can tell you is what's going to give you the best outcome. Yeah, that's all I can do. I'm not your financial planner.
And I
get out of it.
I talk about those things in my course. So, a couple of the examples I use is your accountant doesn't just do half your tax return because you can't afford the whole thing. And I know this sounds confronting, and I'm trying to make a lighthearted joke of it, but when I had my brain surgery, it was a very expensive procedure, and my surgeon didn't say to me, we'll just take out half because that's all you can afford. I mean, they give you the right solution with the best outcome in the moment at the time. And then you're exactly right. The patient gets to make that decision. You don't work around their next appointment when they get paid next. And certainly you definitely do. There needs to be some empathy for financial situations, but it shouldn't be when, or the end game for when you're booking or why you're rebooking somebody.
And imagine the script, Jade. Imagine and think about what we say in our cubicles. And when we say we're going to do say the therapist who doesn't have a real confident manner, you come back on Friday, Jade, we'll do a couple of these, we'll do a few of these, we'll do a bit of this, and we'll do some of this. Little bit, some, sort of, few, kind of. Any of those words need to be rubbed out of your vocabulary straight away. Like, you're in front of the brain surgeon, when we open you up, Jade, we'll do a bit of this and we'll do some of this and we'll try a few of these and we'll see how that goes. No, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to do exactly this. I'll do this. And if that doesn't work, I'll do this. Either way, you'll get the result you wanted, Jade. How do you think that's going to go? What do you think? That's the confidence you want.
And it's a perfect definition of conviction over confidence, is a belief, a firmly held belief that it's going to work. And that's what I say a lot of the time to the graduates who say to me, look, but I'm just not confident. Like, confidence is not who you are, it's what you do. Yeah. And if you've got the right tools, you can fake it till you make it. Obviously not in harming somebody, but you need to be able to, because if you're not confident, somebody is not going to trust you, and they're going to be, down the road at the next practitioner quicker than you can blink.
And the key to a, Jade, is you leverage ordinary people with great systems. Now I'm not saying that derogatorily and saying that your team are ordinary, but if you're holding out for superstars, if your recruitment plan is to hold out for a superstar, that's not a great business model, because the superstars are doing their own thing or doing something else. So you'll find people who are okay, and you've got to leverage them with great systems. And if that's the script, if that's the report of findings and the script to deliver it better, if that's the system, you can leverage ordinary people with great systems. And that's what we suggest you do in practice.
And it's the whole concept behind good to great in private practice. The course is you start off good, but with the right systems and processes and procedures and learning from that, and then repeating it and making a habit into a routine, then you can become great at what you do.
Which comes back to our perfectionist problem. We think because I'm a 100% person, my therapists are also going to be 100% people. But you might be able to find a 100% person. You find someone who's great, who is even good, who's even okay, but you leverage them with systems and make them good, they will still give a great outcome for that person. Then your team aren't going to be you. So stop expecting them to be you. It's a recipe for disaster.
And this is the beauty of coaching, though, isn't it? It's going to somebody who has systems and policies and procedures in place so you can fast track, because time is the new rich right now. Time is the new rich. That's what we all want. No one cares about money or even lifestyle anymore. We need time to be able to enjoy our life in the first place. So if you can get a whole lot of bundled up scripts and processes and procedures, this is what you want. And this will fast track success most of the time.
And you might be a superstar, but the patient coming in doesn't know your 100% skill level from the 60% therapist. Like, what's the expression? To the blind man, the one-eyed man is king. Like just look, I got 1,000 of these.
Keep coming. Can we write a book? Paul writes one-liners. That'll be your next bestseller.
I just remember them because I like them. I think, oh, that makes sense. I'll use that. That's just, I don't know, I remember them. But
you know what will happen in about 2 months? I'll be delivering a course and I'll be quoting about this conversation.
I got 4 beautiful daughters now older and flown the coop, and they put this on me now. Like if I'm doing something with them, one of my favorites that I used years ago was if your business is bad, if it's going to hell in a handbasket, it's always the owner's fault. So accept you're the problem, the owner's fault. And the expression, well, the fish stinks from the head down is the expression. And I go home and I whinge about something, and if one of the girls are there, fish stinks from the head down, Dad. Fish stinks from the head down. Yes, that's all I need now. Now they're telling me what I'm doing.
And I was watching, I think I mentioned in your podcast, I was watching a cartoon the other day I was watching with my daughter. It was called Ants or something.
Yeah, yes.
One of the big ants came down into the big ant hive and they were all petrified and scared. And he turns around and he says, the first lesson of leadership is that it's always your fault.
Yep.
And that's, for me personally, that I feel is the burden I've been carrying for the last 18 months. No matter how much adrenaline you've got, no matter how much you love it, no matter how well you make decisions, I feel like I'm carrying around responsibility fatigue now. I just want to be able to put the pack down a little bit and take a rest and rest my shoulders, and even give it to somebody else to carry for a while. And I think that's, delegating responsibility. Do business owners need to do that? I mean, I've got a wonderful team, but there's certain COVID decisions that I haven't been able to offload, and I wouldn't to my team.
They talk about delegation compared to abdication. The mistake is when you abdicate it, you give it to someone else and you forget about it. You delegate it, but you're still overseeing it in some way, shape, or form. That's the problem. But you've got to be the decision maker, and you're the decision maker. Everything, and I actually find that very freeing, Jade. Some people get worried if the team lets them down or someone didn't do this. Like the guy turns up and he didn't have his key, so he couldn't open the practice on time. Like, well, that's not that guy's fault. It's your fault. What's the backup system? What's the process if that happens? That's your fault. It stops you from blaming everything. Accept 100% responsibility for yourself. It's actually very freeing. Yeah. And you can decide to fix it or not. But I decided not to fix that. That's my choice. Otherwise, you'll be down on people all the time, and that's the most draining thing you can be. Disappointing your team, but accept responsibility for yourself and your business. That's when the power starts.
And this common theme of choice comes up constantly. Whether we like it or not, if you are a business owner, you've made that choice, and continuing to run that business, you're continuing to choose to be the business owner. If you don't want to be a business owner anymore, you can walk away. What about those people that say, I just can't, this is my livelihood, I don't want this anymore, but I'm tied to it?
Well, you're not tied to anything. No one's tied to anything. You're not, like, you don't want to go to work, you don't go to work. There's a consequence to that, but what is the consequence worth the dropping it? Like, I've got a guy, how's this? He got totally upset with having team members. Team members let him down. He says, it's causing me too much stress. And we talked about him as the Mr. X model. So he's changed his whole business model. He's now Mr. X, meaning he's got his roster and he's got set hours that he does consulting. His admin person comes in sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes she's there, sometimes she's not. Sometimes if the surf's up, he'll go surfing and just put a note in the door saying, I'm not available today. He only works school holiday, school time, school terms, doesn't do anything school holidays, charges whatever he decides to charge for the consultations. Only takes cash. You can't take credit card, FPOS, anything else. He's doing it on his terms. You say, well, I can't do that. Well, yes, you can. He did it. Anyone can do it. He's just decided that's how he wants to run his business. That's a choice. You decide. That wasn't my model because I didn't want to be there ever. That was too much for me. So I wanted team members and multiple practices and leverage. You do have a choice. You're not actually locked into anything. You decide and free yourself from the decision. You make a decision and stick by it. That's.
I couldn't agree. You do fall into that sometimes of, well, I don't have a choice, but I think it is probably enlightening and freeing that you are making that choice every single day by continuing to do what you're doing.
Well, a couple of mistakes. I said we're running out of time, and there's nothing worse than getting the 7 secrets plug and not doing the 7 secrets. I did this once. I went to a Gerber seminar originally, and he promised me the 7 secrets or something, and he got to secret number 5, and he said, "I'm out of time now. Thanks very much," and walked off the stage. And for a guy like me, that's just, you can't do that to me. That's criminal. So I needed the other.
We're up to number 5.
Well, 5 is the mistake. Number 5 is using your accountant to tell you your business P&L. Remember, your accountant's job is not to give you your P&L. Your accountant's job is to make sure you're compliant with tax and to stay out of court and hopefully reduce your tax. You need a separate, I believe you need a separate P&L that has some reflection of your consulting effort in the business, your owner consulting wage. Because think about how you might draw your wage now. Sometimes, a lot of times, the amount of money you pay yourself in a lot of practices is a accountancy taxation decision aimed around reducing your tax, not a reflection of your consulting input. So when we talk about owner consulting wage and putting an hourly rate on your physical consulting work, you don't have to pay yourself that, but that's the figure that you have, and you put it into your other P&L that reflects your consulting time. So you've got to get, because what you've got to try and do, Jade, it's one of the only ways I've been able to convince health business owners to reduce their consulting is by showing them that they can still maintain profitability while dropping their consulting hours. Because we've got the dentist model. It's write this one down as well. If you're not drilling, you're not billing. There's from the dentist world. So we have the same thing. Yeah. So be careful of how you do your P&L, and there's a specific way to do it that it's off the books. It's not the taxation thing. It's on a separate spreadsheet. It just includes your contribution to consulting in it. And that's number 5.
It is true. I mean, I was lucky enough, I started paying myself a wage way before I had children, so that when I did have kids, I could step away and still continue to draw that wage. If not, it's really hard to put a valuation on the business, because otherwise it's just the goodwill. And how do you expect somebody to buy it at a certain price when you take yourself out of the business and all of a sudden the whole value of the business is destroyed? So,
but even then, your wage is determined by a taxation decision. It's not, you weren't consulting, but you're still drawing the same wage. So that doesn't give me an idea of how much consulting you're doing as a practitioner. So you got to differentiate those sort of things. So you got to work out a down and dirty profit and loss, which is number 5. Number 6, ineffective and non-existent recruitment strategies and systems. Like we've learned now, you're always got to be hiring, and it's true. The worst time to hire is when you need someone. We've talked about this for years. It's having staff members ready to go. My favourite one, Jade, was people would approach us to work at Get Active Physio, and I'd say, well, yeah, tell you what, drop into one of the practice and have a look around. And I'd always send them to my gold star practice. I'd send them to the great practice that has $2 million worth of equipment, the indoor pool, like it's got stuff that's hot. And I'd want that person to turn up at the practice. I'd just go anytime you like, they're always there. The person would turn up and I'd make sure they went to the front desk of the therapist of the practice and introduce themselves. G'day, I'm Brian. Paul, I might be starting work here. Paul asked me to come and have a look around the practice. Now, there's method to my madness. I wanted the person to come in there first and have a look around and go, wow, I want to be part of this. So that was number 1. The other thing, I wanted my current team to know that they were replaceable. This is terrible, isn't it? I want my other team to know that if they decided to leave, I've always got people coming asking to work. So it's kind of worked for me. But the idea being I've always got people looking to come on board, whether I've got a position available or not.
Yeah.
And Jim Collins said it best: first who, then what. If you found a great person, you're probably better off giving them a job, because the universe is telling you right now that someone's going to leave. How many times have you found a great person, not given them a job because you haven't got a spot, and then a week later someone leaves, you contact the other person, they've found another job. The universe was pick up on it. First who, then what. Great people will create a position for themselves.
Yeah. And I had 2 amazing applicants for a job back in March, and that Lorraine Longmire quote, say yes first and sort it out later. Yeah. I just said, I'll hire you both. I didn't have a job for both of them, and now they've been absolutely brilliant. Granted, we've had COVID there in the middle, but I didn't want to lose either of them. And it's great if you're not front of mind, you're not in mind at all. And
I interviewed an acupuncturist came and applied for a position. Didn't have an acupuncture department, didn't have an acupuncturist. This guy applied for a position, and I don't know how we even got into the interview, but Helen, my beautiful wife, organised the interview. And he came in, and we didn't have a position, but he was such a winner. So, well, we gave him a job. So he created the acupuncture department. He was with us for 8 years. But I didn't go out looking for him. But good, first who, then what is a fundamental principle.
And especially, right now when people really are struggling for that retention and also attraction, I think it's a good note. If you can get somebody, take them whenever, whoever, and make it work. So, Well, this takes us to number 7, does it?
Not packaging your services. We talked in this first part of today about packages. You can't just run a practice based on your therapy. You've got to make it on a solution to a problem. So the run a pain-free marathon program, the garden pain-free program, we've got clients doing the Bite Right TMJ program. So your practice becomes the home of that program. It's not driven by the therapist, it's driven by the package, and you can then market that package much more effectively because you're solving a problem. So you can go to dentists, you can go to people and say, we are the home of the Bite Right TMJ program. Now, the other guy at the moment might be the university lecturer in TMJ, but as I said before, that's irrelevant. You're the only people with a TMJ Bite Right program. And then it doesn't matter who the people see, you become known for the program, not just known as the provider of an osteopathy physiotherapy service, because that's commoditizing you. Okay, you've got to stand out in the marketplace, and you're the only person who does that. You can charge premium prices because you're no longer compared to everyone else.
Great point. What do you say to those practice owners out there that shy away from this packaging 5 consultations for this amount of money, and it's not patient-centered, it's practitioner-directed? I mean, there's a lot of movement there at the moment where, packaging potentially, they would say once upon a time was a great opportunity, but with this evidence-based medicine, do you have to tie in how many consultations are needed in that package?
No, you can say you're the home of the program. It doesn't. We're not even talking about paying in advance or paying so many consults. It can be session by session, which is no different than what you're doing. But Jade, you've got this problem. We've got a protocol for that. It's our 6-step migraine program. It's a GrowthRx migraine program, and we'll get you started on it now. Most people are finished in about 4 weeks. But it's no different than what you're actually doing. You're just putting a name to it.
Yeah, and I mean, the perfect description of that is framing. Yep. You engage people through framing. You're saying the same thing, but just better.
Yep.
And if we say the same thing better, you become a point of difference in your community. Yep. Absolutely. So I've got 2 more things before we finish up. One of them.
All right. Let me brace myself. Hang on.
Okay. You talk about this single sheet of paper that all health professionals must have. What needs to be on that?
You've got to have a written report of findings, Jade. It's an action plan. It's a report of findings. You guys, Kyra's Osteo has been doing it great for years, but it's the recommendation of what that person's going to walk away with and do as a result of it. And when we started doing this in physio world and in chiro world, it's what I wanted, Jade, was a number. So on that sheet, if you came and saw us as a patient, Jade, for you to get back running the marathon, you need to see me twice a week for the next 2 weeks, and we'll get you into that marathon, no problems at all. So twice a week for 2 weeks gives me a number. That's 4. So I know then, if I'm the therapist, I'm recommending 4 consultations, and that's on my sheet. They take that out to the front. The therapist walks out with the patient. John, I need to see Jade twice a week for the next 2 weeks. That's part of her plan. Book those in now because we're really heavily booked, and I wanted to make sure she gets into that marathon. She does the 4 sessions in advance. You're buying the plan. You're not buying the session by session. So I can measure that number. I can then measure the admin team. Did they book all 4? If I see the register and I've recommend 4s and the admin's booking 1, I've got a sheet that says 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, and it's specifically one admin person. I've got an admin problem. Without that sheet, I don't know it. Yeah. And it's written there. It's the piece of paper. It's old school, but gee, it works.
And it's objectifying your plan rather than creating individual interpretation of what should happen from the practitioner to the admin. You're actually putting that down on paper, and you're tying it back into the emotion of what the person wants to achieve. Let's get you back to doing what you love. So, I mean, I love that concept. We do it all the time. And again, it's not about being inauthentic. And also, since I've done a lot of study in social psychology, it comes back down to that anchor bias. You've given them a couple of consultations. This is what it takes to get you back to where you want to be. That is patient-centered. But, if you just come in for one consultation and not the 2 that I've recommended, you're not going to get the result that I was hoping that you would get. So it is.
If you were my daughter, Jade, this is what we'll be doing to get you to that marathon in 2 weeks' time. This is what we'll be doing. Yeah. That's all it is. It's patient-centered. It's just giving them a plan, a frame to work around.
Yeah, perfect. And lastly, this towel story. Give me the towel story. I've been waiting this whole session for this. So it's got to be good. I've built it up.
Well, it's probably disappointing for you. One of the mistakes I made in business, I ended up with 6 practices, and because laundry became expensive, it was expensive because we did all the laundry initially. It just got bigger and bigger, and so I got to the stage, Jade, I wasn't seeing patients because I thought my time was too valuable to see patients, but I was still driving around to the practices each week, collecting the money, but also collecting the towels. So I'd lug into the practice with these towels, and I'd swap the towels over, bring them back home, and we'd wash them. It was ridiculous stuff. And the funniest thing was, at that stage, I had a 300 ZX Nissan, like a sports car, and I've got, there's not a lot of space in the 300 ZX, so I'm in this car, driving from Newcastle to Sydney, crammed full of towels either way. So I'm in this 300 ZX up like this, towels are everywhere, and we were laughing. And Helen would say, "Well, at least if you have an accident, you're going to be safe because there's towels around," and it's true. And we finally realized that this is ridiculous. We're making this money and we're doing $300 work. So the lesson really is outsource the things you shouldn't be doing. Here's another one for you. Write this one down. Pay once, cry once. Just pay it, get over it, and move on. We just get caught up with these little expenses. Just get rid of it.
Outsourcing is just so important. It's been a game changer for myself and my clinic, is just finding people who can do it better than you and get them to do it. They'll usually do it faster and better. And it frees you up to have more time to do the things that you're better at yourself.
I've got on the wall, as we speak on my wall here, what's the most important thing that only I can do right now? What's the most important thing that only I can do right now? And if you live your life by that, get rid of everything else, you'll be a success in business, because there's so much time wasted doing things you just shouldn't be doing. Just shouldn't be doing them. Well,
there you go. You've heard it all here. The last 60 minutes jam-packed. Paul, the Oracle, Wright, with all his golden nuggets and years of business coaching. And I think that your philosophies have stood the test of time, and they're certainly going to be, challenged along the way as the new generations come in with their TikTok and their their reels on YouTube and Instagram. There's going to be things that we do very, very differently. But I think that there's a lot of the foundations that you teach that certainly put me in good stead in business, and certainly a lot of others. And you're a character. I could talk to you all afternoon. How do people find you? Obviously, you've got your Practiceology website. How else can people find you?
Best way, guys, jump on one of our webinars. We do a live training, a demonstration really of the Practiceology program. So we go through the foundational principles of Practiceology, the protocols you need, and we just give you a demonstration of how to run a great business. We've got a page set up for Jay. Just go to mypracticeology.com/Scott. So mypracticeology.com/Scott. I think we've got one coming up next week. So just log on there. There's a 7 a.m. or a 5 p.m. time slot. It's open slather. We have a lot of fun. It's just good demonstration of how to run a great business. We talk a lot more about the P&L, and I'll show you some examples of how to structure that in part of that presentation. And if you want to get a copy of How to Run a 1-Minute Practice, simple book. I didn't want to, how ironic, I didn't want to have a 2,000-page journal. You've got to have a simple read to run a 1-minute practice, and we got a special on that for Jade's listeners. Go to 1minutepractice.com/book sales, and you can get it there cheap, and 2 coupon codes, Jade OS for any overseas people, or Jade AUST for Australians, and that'll take some money off it. I think you get the book for about $5. Including postage. So, but jump on the webinar first, mypracticeology.com/Scott. And I look forward to seeing on one of those presentations because they're a heap of fun.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's always a pleasure. It's been nice to reconnect with you after all of these years, and you haven't changed one bit, or maybe for the better. And, hopefully I haven't aged too much either.
You look fantastic.
But thank you very much. Thank you. I know how busy you are, and I know how valuable your time is. So thank you for taking the time out. It's been really nice to introduce you to the GrowthRx community, and I hope to have your 2 cents worth in a lot of the discussions coming up in the future, and a lot more of your quotes. And I can't wait to read your new quote book. Paul Wright, Golden Nuggets.
Absolute pleasure. You are a superstar. I've loved watching your journey, Jade. You are a superstar. Well done.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Bye.